Ey Müslümanlar! Biliniz ki devletimiz İslamiyet'in addü ve canı olan Moskov, İngiliz ve Fransız hükümetleriyle muharip bulunuyor. Emir-ül-Müminin Hazretleri sizi cihada davet ediyor.
The call goes out for jihad, holy war. Germany hoped her new ally Turkey would do just what it was told, and the Allies thought Turkey would be a pushover. But the war in the Middle East went its own wild way. The Kaiser had been cultivating the Ottoman Empire long before the war began. He wore a fez on state visits. He was nicknamed Haji Wilhelm, following rumours that he'd become a Muslim and made the pilgrimage to Mecca.
The 300 million Muslims scattered across the globe can be assured that the German Emperor is, and will at all times remain, their friend.
Part of Germany's interest in Ottoman Turkey was that they shared a common enemy, Russia. Turkey's position, controlling the Dardanelles Straits, gave her the power to lock Russia up in the Black Sea. And Turkey shared a volatile border with Russia in the Caucasus.
Russia is the hereditary enemy of the Ottoman Empire, and her greatest desire is the possession of Constantinople.
The Ottoman Empire once stretched from the Arabian Peninsula to the gates of Vienna. But it had lost a third of its territory in a run of disastrous wars. The Ottoman Empire was the sick man of Europe, broke and on the verge of collapse.
The great powers have grasped us by the throat. The government can't pay monthly salaries. All the public services are under the control of privileged foreign capital. It would be very easy for a patriot to go out of his mind.
But one group of nationalist reformers planned to stop the rot, the Young Turks. In 1909, they replaced the Sultan with his brother as a puppet and started a program of modernization. They looked for an ally to ward off predators and bankroll the future. The ambitious Minister of War favoured Germany. Just 32 years old, Enver Pasha had risen through the ranks, married the Sultan's niece, and lived in splendour in Constantinople, also known as Istanbul. Enver Pasha had been military attaché in Berlin. The Germans had the power his country needed.
I watched a parade of 33,000 German soldiers. It was so excellent, it makes one's mouth water. The reason I love Germany is not sentimentality, but the fact that she is not a danger to my beloved country. On the contrary, our two countries' interests go hand in hand.
Chief of the German General Staff, Helmut von Moltke, ruled out Turkey as an ally.
Turkey is militarily a non-entity. If Turkey was described before as a sick man, it must now be described as a dying man.
The flamboyant Baron Max von Oppenheim made the Kaiser think again. An archaeologist and consular official, Oppenheim passed himself off as an Islamic expert. He was also a German agent. He advocated a holy war to bring down the British Empire.
When the Turks invade Egypt and India is set ablaze with the flames of revolt, Only then will England crumble. For England is at her most vulnerable in her colonies.
By the outbreak of war, the Kaiser had come to see jihad as the way to foment revolution among the millions of Muslims under British rule.
Our consuls and agents in Turkey and India must inflame the whole Mohammedan world to wild uprising. For if we are to be bled to death, at least England shall lose India.
The Ottoman Empire had found its ally, Germany. Enver bypassed the Turkish cabinet, secretly signing an alliance on the 2nd of August 1914, while maintaining a public stance of neutrality. Constantinople became the jump-off point for subversion to set the East ablaze. The German embassy became a hive of Oppenheim's raffish spies. One group arrived from Berlin disguised as a traveling circus. The word was the Emir of Afghanistan had 50,000 Muslims ready to invade India. The circus slipped out of Constantinople, bound for Afghanistan. If only they could find it. One of the Turks on the mission was Hussein Rauf.
What do we know about Afghanistan beyond its name? I can't even visualize its place on the map. I don't know how to get there. Do I go via America?
The irony was that Enver Pasha and the Young Turks weren't fanatical believers at all. They went along with Germany's jihad idea out of opportunism. What Enver really wanted was to draw together the Turkic peoples of the East into a new empire. Enver had an army of 800,000, mainly from Anatolia, but also Arabs, Macedonians, Kurds. It was thought to be a spent force, but Enver had reformed it. Germany trained it.
Very considerable progress is being made in the Ottoman army's efficiency. The Turkish forces must now be regarded as a factor to be taken seriously into account.
But Turkey still had not publicly declared herself as Germany's ally, and her cabinet was split over whether to fight. But Turkey was desperate for money. So the Germans decided to sweeten the deal and force the Turks' hand. Two of Germany's cruisers, the Goeben and the Breslau, were being chased across the Mediterranean by the Royal Navy. Rather conveniently, they took refuge in Constantinople on the 11th of August 1914. The presence of two German cruisers riding proudly at anchor by the Golden Horn undermined the Turks' pretense at neutrality. So they shrugged and told the world they'd bought the ships. Their German crews were given fezzes to wear. Their fancy dress antics were the talk of Constantinople.
The Goeben sailed up the Bosphorus, halted in front of the Russian embassy. Officers and men solemnly removed their Turkish fezzes and put on German caps. The band played Deutschland über alles. When they'd spent an hour or two serenading the Russian ambassador, they put on their fezzes, then picked up anchor, leaving in the ears of the Russian diplomat the dying strains of German war songs. The
Turkish fleet, led by the Goeben and the Breslau, steamed out of the Bosphorus. On the 29th of October 1914, they attacked several Russian ports. Enver Pasha had the gateway to the Black Sea mined. The Germans paid over £5 million in gold, securing Turkey as their ally. Turkey had joined in the First World War pretty much on her own terms and with her own agenda.
Persian Muslims are threatening trouble. There is a dry wind blowing through the east and the parched grasses wait the spark. And the wind is blowing towards the Indian border.
Fiction by novelist John Buchan, but based on real fears of an Islamic holy war. By late 1914, Enver was looking east. He had big ideas both for jihad and for uniting the Turkic peoples.
Beyond the frontiers, there are brethren to be liberated and bits of fatherland to be redeemed.
Nearly 40 years before, Russia had stolen a chunk of eastern Turkey along its Caucasian border. Enver was desperate to kick the Russians off Turkish soil. But it was an area riven with ethnic friction. Russians, Turks, Georgians, Kurds, and on both sides of the frontier, Armenian Christians. Loyalties in the Caucasus were hard to read, hard to be sure of. Here at Erzurum Castle in November 1914, encouraged by the Germans, Enver Pasha took a key decision. Though winter was closing in, he threw his army at the Russians. Now he played the Islam card.
300 million Muslims are sighing under their chains, and all our former fellow countrymen are praying for our victory and success. Happy is he who falls for religion and fatherland. Forward, always forward for victory and fame and martyrdom and paradise.
In December 1914, the Turkish 9th Corps marched through the high passes of the Allah Ekber Mountains. The aim was to sweep down on the town of Sarıkamış and encircle the Russians. The Russians at first panicked and retreated. Enver's bold gamble nearly paid off. But then the temperature plummeted, and the Turks struggled into worsening conditions. Enver tried to reassure them.
I see that you don't have shoes or coats, but the enemy is afraid of you.
The Germans complained about our slowness, but the snow was so deep. Soldiers got lost at night. Some tried to light fires, but many fell asleep, never to wake again. We realized in the morning that half the division had frozen to death.
The weather and terrain killed 25,000 Turks before they even made contact with the Russians.